Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the best villains in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. So, I think that Baldur's Gate 3 has some of the best villains in video game history because we got a good mix of them, some that are extremely evil in the case of like Orin, and some that are chaotically funny and almost like Disney villains with Raphael. But I'll be giving my thoughts on all of these and ranking them on a tier list. So, the first one we got here is Auntie Ethel and the Hag. This is kind of, I think, the best Hag character that we gotten. It somewhat reminds me of the ones that we get in Witcher 3, but on a whole other level. What makes a villain really great, I think, is the ability to hate them a lot. And Auntie Ethel fits that. She's just extremely evil. And it's not that she's like evil for the sake of being evil like Orin is. She's a hag, and she's got her twisted way of doing things. Almost similar to Raphael and how he offers the player things, but it's kind of like the monkey paws curled whenever he gives you his wish. She doesn't actually give you a true wish. She is just straight up corrupt and evil. Now, what's cool is she has kind of interaction with that with the player as well. You can actually get the hag's hair, and I highly recommend doing that because it's going to give you a boost of 1 to one of your stats. So you can take it to 17 up to 18. So she is worth doing early in Act 1, as it's going to be a nice boost for your character. But in addition to that, she's also just a really well-wrote character, as her interactions with the player and interactions with the girl that she has captured are very interesting, I would say. And what's cool is once you get to Act 3, she also has a pretty big involvement there. So you get to mess around with her for the whole game. I also think that her boss fights are some of the most interesting, frustrating at first. My first time doing this boss fight was a challenge, or even getting down to the boss fight. Her whole layer was really well done, and it just has a very eerie feel to it that I think doesn't get captured well in other games that are trying to go this route with their character, like a hag-like character. So I honestly think that Auntie Ethel I would put her high A tier to S tier. She was really great. It's a villain that you want to hate, and I think, again, that is the hallmark of a good villain. So she's going up there high. Now, she isn't my favorite villain, but she's, I would say, one of the better rogue characters in Baldur's Gate 3 and even in video games as far as hag characters go. Next, we got Kaga, who is the arch druid of the Druid's Grove, and she's trying to seal the area off from the tieflings. There's a bit of drama there, and what's actually kind of dark is she can actually kill Arabella, so you don't want that to happen. Don't let it happen, because if Halsin finds out, Halsin loses it at her. But I think the biggest problem with her is actually her haircut. Just being honest, like, that's villainous hair right there. Pretty ugly. But anyways, her character in general is evil, but I feel like her motives are kind of weak in comparison to some other characters for being evil. Like, she's not a bad villain by any means. Like, she's very impactful early on in the game. But again, the Act 1 villains I feel like are a bit weaker than the others because they don't have the build-up that the other characters have. So I'll put her in the B tier because the Druid Grove is a really good introduction. Like, Act 1 has a lot of love sprinkled into it, and she is a great villain overall. I just think, in the grand scheme of things, she's pretty forgettable as far as villains go, but still really good while she's there. So, yeah, Kaga, that Druid, B tier. Next, we have Dror Ragzlin. Now, he's, again, similar to what I was saying with Kaga, Act 1 villains didn't get as much attention and love as some of the other villains, and Minthara is kind of like the big bad of the Goblin camp. He's got, some involvement as well, but not as much as Minthara has, and definitely not as much as some of the other villains on this list. So he is interesting because you can let him live into Act 2, and Balthazar, who I guess is missing from this list, but I'll rank at the end. Balthazar does turn him into a zombie if you make him live, so it also can zombify Minthara, so kind of creepy if you go that route, but he's just an easy villain to take out. Doesn't have too much dialogue. You don't really get a big, you don't have much care for this character, so I'll put Dror Ragzlin in the C tier just because he doesn't have much dialogue, and you do see him at the start of the game with Minthara overlooking the Nautiloid crash, so he is, pretty important for Act 1, but Minthara kind of outshines him, and even Gut has more. I feel like Gut has a lot more than he has, so yeah, we'll put him in the C tier. Next, we got Malice Thorm, who's actually Ketheric Throm's uncle, which is kind of funny little tie in there. Now, you get to see all of the Thorm family in Act 2, and I think it's really well wrote out. Now, Malice Thorm himself is just, I would say, a fair villain, not like super. I mean, he's kind of like the creepy doctor, and the whole area is actually pretty spooky, but I don't think it's so much him that gives me the creeps. It's more so like even the nurses are kind of freaky, and just the area in general. So I think the setting gives more of the villainous vibes for him rather than him himself. When you talk to him, I mean the dialogue is somewhat forgettable. I think it is cool that he is Ketheric's uncle, so I guess bonus points for that. So I'll put him in the B tier, but I think Kaga's even a better villain than he is. So yeah, I can't put him too high. But next we got, I would say my favorite villain in the game is Ketheric Throm. Now they also went ahead and got J.K. Simmons to voice Ketheric. He has one of the best introductions for a villain whenever the goblins are, talking to him, trying to get their forgiveness, and then the goblin throws the halberd at him, and it just goes right through, and then he just rips it out. That is one of the most epic moments in this game. But I would say that Ketheric as well has a very well wrote backstory, as he's heavily involved in the story of Act 2. And kind of the whole act is leading up to a story. So he previously was a general of a Selenite general and loses his daughter. And it's a really tragic tale. And I think that's what makes him such a great villain, is the fact that there's such an involvement to the plot. But also with Isabel, like, he's the most human villain on this list. Like, you can see that he's trying to do well and do well for his daughter. And that's what led him down the bad path. And then became a Shar worshipper because he was told that, the Lady of Loss, you can get what you lost back. So you can totally see why he goes the evil route. And even once you get to the top of Moonrise Towers in Act 2 and you're talking with him, you can actually talk him out of fighting your character because he sees the error of his ways, which is, I think, makes him a very well-wrote villain. But he does come a bit short, because then Merkel comes along and he's the chosen of Merkel, so you can fight them. It's a pretty epic fight. Honestly, a lot of people I've seen online say that they wish the game ended in Act 2, which I disagree. I like everything we got, but I think he would have been a great final villain. So, it's kind of sucks that it's Act 2 and then you get into Act 3 and there's a whole new world. Act 2 is like the climax of Act 2. So much happens. Like, you got the whole Githyanki business going on. You got the Moonrise Towers. You got the Illithid, and you got his finale, which is just incredible. So Ketheric Throm, a really great villain, and a very human villain too, which makes him somewhat relatable to the character and I guess to the player. But yeah, I would have to say he's top of the S tier. He's probably the best villain in the game. Although Raphael does give him a run for his money, Ketheric is still quite the heavy hitter in terms of where I would see them on this tier list. So Ketheric Throm, really great villain and very human story. So next we got Cazador, which is, Astarion's big play in the game, and you don't actually get to really see Cazador too much unless you play as Origin Astarion. If you play as Origin Astarion, you actually get a dream visit from him, so you can kind of get your story set up with him without having to go learn about it from Raphael. Cazador is like a traditional evil villain. He wants to ascend. He's a vampire. As far as vampires go, I think he's got a pretty good story underneath him. So I would say Cazador is probably like A tier. Not the best villain in the game. I think his voice actor did a great job as well. So that's another thing. Obviously, J.K. Simmons did a great job with Ketheric. And I really like the Hag voice actor as well. Really sells it. And he sounds like an evil vampire. Now, there's a lot going on with the whole Cazador storyline and Astarion. So some people don't like the story of Cazador, but I think it's a well done one. There's many different ways you can end the storyline too. So you can let Astarion finish the ritual. You can let him ascend. You can stop the ritual. You can kill Cazador. You can refuse to help Astarion. Like, there's a lot of ways that this can go. And I think it's a very interesting story. So I'll put it up in the A tier. I guess I probably should have like Mistral in here too for Gale, because not that she's really a villain that you fight, but to the same respect, the character has a lot of trauma and backstory because of them. But next we get into one of my favorite villains with Raphael. Now, Raphael has a lot going on with him. You see him throughout the game, and what's kind of funny is early on in my very first playthrough, I got captured by Priestess Gut, and I got Helsing actually came and saved my character, and then that was my introduction to Raphael, which was really cool. But Raphael's kind of watching your character. Like, he is on the map whenever you're traveling. You can see him off in the distance. And you can sneak up and you can get the Heldesk armor from him early on. There's a few different glitches and kind of bugs that you can take advantage of to be able to get that. But I think that Raphael as a whole is a great character. He's, again, more of a, as I said earlier, Disney villain. Like, he's not As far as devils go, devils should be a bit more serious, but I don't mind in this case. I know that was a big complaint some people had with this character because he was more so focused on, being a funny, not comedic, but like did have some funny moments. So I would have to say that he is also S tier. He's got a lot of cool involvement though. Like in Act 1, he shows up. In Act 2, he's playing chess with Mole, and that's obviously not something we want to see happening. And overall, through the arcing plots in Baldur's Gate 3, I would say that his character is one of the best wrote villains, just because he's got such a tight involvement. He helps Astarion learn about his scars. Like he fills the role of like a textbook villain, but again, a bit more on the comedic side of things. And another thing is too, I forgot my point on that, but he is a really well done villain. So I would say that he is S tier for sure. Raphael is really great and probably above the Hag there. I don't think I like him as much as Ketheric, but one cool thing is you can go to the House of Hope and learn a lot about the backstory of Raphael. So you can even talk to Harlep and get you can sleep with the Harlep, and you get some funny dialogue with Raphael too. So there's tons of different ways you can go about his story. Even Yurgir, who's in the Act 2 Shar Temple, you can talk him into, offing himself and getting out of the contract that he has with Raphael, and you can also get him for the fight with Raphael. So there's a lot of things that relate to Raphael throughout the game. I think he's a very interesting, complex character. So obviously very evil to the bone. He's the devil. Don't give him his ending, because it's a bad ending. But yeah, Raphael S tier. Next we got Sarevok, who's this is a very complex character. He's actually from the earlier Baldur's Gate games, and if you have Jaheira and Minsk in your party when you go to meet him, he will recognize them, which is kind of a cool interaction. A little callback to the previous games. But what's messed up is his relationship with Orin. So he had a daughter who is Orin's mom, but he is also Orin's father. So he's Orin's father and he's Orin's grandfather. Messed up. I'm not going to talk too much about that because that's just gross and disgusting. He doesn't he is head of the murder tribunal in Act 3, and you can actually get some really good items from him. So I highly recommend going about that, because he'll also give you the amulet of Ball, which is required to go to get Orin. So he's one that you will have to go meet up with. You can kill Valeria the elephant to get the become an unholy murderer, an unholy assassin of Baal, which is kind of cool. You can get the Baalist armor from this area too. So some of the most overpowered items in the game are from him, and you can also get the Sword of Chaos straight from him if you end up fighting him. So he's got a pretty big involvement in Act 3 in relation to Orin, and rightfully so. He's a Baal spawn character. I would have to say he's probably A tier. Pretty messed up in the grand scheme of things. He's it's a dark story with him. So yeah, without getting too much into things there, he's a well-wrote villain, but kind of comes from the previous games. That's where I'd say he gets a lot of his villainous from. So yeah, that's not really a word. But next we got Orin, which is directly related to Sarevok. So Orin is just batshit crazy. I wouldn't put it any other way. She is evil for the sake of being evil, so I don't think that she is like an S tier villain, because I do feel like her writing is a little bit not lackluster, but I feel like some other villains just are a bit better than her, because she's just straight up evil. So well, she is she's a villain, but I just feel like the other characters have stronger motives. Like the crazy I'm evil, I feel like the Hag does that better. The Hag's more believable. Now, I do like the shape-shifting shenanigans that she does in Act 2 or Act 3. I think that was pretty cool, especially the first time playing through. Cool little trick. If you see a character and they have like low health but they have level 12, it's her in disguise. So yeah, I would have to say that she is somewhere in the A tier, probably around there. I feel like Cazador might be a bit better of a villain. He feels more believable than she does. So yeah, I can't put her in the S tier. I'll just put her in A tier. Next we have Gortash. Now I feel like he's also evil for being evil, but he's kind of like evil bro. Like you can actually side with Gortash and you can actually take him out. Now I know a lot of players right now are begging Larian to add a romance with him in the Dark Urge. I think that's hilarious that they're trying to convince convince Larian of that. I don't think that's going to happen, but of the Unholy Three, I feel like he is maybe like the least evil for being evil. It's hard to say. Like Ketheric is obviously trying to do right by his daughter. He just wants power. He's just he's a tyrant. He just wants to be able to control Baldur's Gate City. I'd probably put him somewhere around Cazador, maybe above Cazador. Yeah, hard to say. Like, he just looks like a little grease ball, and he's described as being super handsome and all this stuff, which is hilarious because he just looks like a little slime ball. He looks like the protagonist of Final Fantasy 15 plus 40 years and of just greasy. So yeah, A tier. He's a good villain, but I feel like I prefer some of the other villains in this game a bit more. Finally, we got the Mother Brain, and I guess we'll talk about the Emperor as well here, because the Emperor is such an integral plot. He's not always a villain. Depends how you go about things. You can side with him. That's what I did my first playthrough, because I just felt like that was the right way to do things, but there's no right way to beat this game. That's the beauty of it. There's like 14,000 different endings, and yeah, I think that the Mother Brain is a very interesting character. Back to the Emperor, because the Mother Brain it's just evil trying to take over. The Illithids are evil, but the Emperor is very complex as a character. I would probably put him in the S tier, the Emperor himself, just because he's Balduran. He's got a lot of heavy history related to the game. I think he's a well-wrote character because he could go evil or he can go good depending on your choices in the game. So I think that the Emperor himself is a great character. While not a true villain, I do think that they are wrote incredibly well. But we also have the Mother Brain, which, I don't know, I feel like probably like B tier. Doesn't really, like, it's just evil. I don't know. There's not a much, and rightfully so, there's not too much that it can talk too much about with the character. So yeah, that I'm realizing now we miss characters like Vlaakith on this list. This list that I found didn't have them on here, but Vlaakith is a great character as well. I might redo this with more villains in the future, because this is something that could be talked about for hours and hours. Like, depending on like what you've done in your last playthrough will even impact your character, your thoughts on this. So yeah, I do think though Ketheric, Raphael, and the Hag are some of the best villains in this game. Very well wrote characters, and Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, like all the way through, we got great characters. So let me know your thoughts on the villains in Baldur's Gate 3 in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.